Good evening, everyone. I'm Shelley Thompson. I work here at the district. I do our public affairs. I'm so happy to welcome you to our candidates forum this evening. So South Tahoe Public Utility District, we were formed back in 1950. We're the water and sewer provider here in South Lake Tahoe, and we're governed by a 5% board. We have 3 seats open, of which we have 4 wonderful candidates vying for those spots. So tonight you'll have the opportunity to meet the candidates and ask some questions. So just quick introductions, they'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves. But we have incumbent Nick Exline, incumbent Shane Ramsos, Dwayne Wallace, and Nick Haven joining us this evening. How the forum will work is we'll begin with a 3-minute opening statement. So we'll hear from all 4 candidates. Then we'll move into questions from the audience. Each candidate will be able to answer all the questions. We'll give them each 2 minutes. And then we'll do a closing statement as well, like 3 minutes for closing statements. Melanie Guthrie is our clerk of the board. She'll be holding up time signals for you gentlemen. She'll give you a 30 seconds remaining and then a time is up. And to be fair to all candidates, I will cut you off. So let's see, after the Q&A, we talked about the closing session. So a few housekeeping. In our lobby, we have bathrooms. We have snacks and coffee and tea. Make yourself comfortable. And we'll go from there. Any questions before we get started? Awesome. All right, then, Melanie, you ready for our clock? So your mics should be hot. Is that right, Ren?
Yes, ma'am.
So when it's your turn, pull the mic down to speak and move it away so you're not breathing into it when someone else is speaking. And we'll take turns of who starts answering each question. But Nick, I'm going to put you in the hot seat to start us off.
All right.
Will you start us off with the 3-minute intro?
Yeah, definitely. Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Nick Exline. I'm obviously a candidate for the South Tahoe Public Utility District Board. I'm an incumbent. I was originally elected in 2018. I've lived in Lake Tahoe since 2008. With my wife Kelly and my 2 kids Callum and Mia, who were both born in Barton. And so, becoming a father, like probably so many of you, or parent like so many of you, really changed me and really got me interested in many things, both in terms of our community, but in a much larger scale as well. So I was really interested to see, how I could become involved with this community and look to use kind of my expertise to kind of further, where we were going and look to solve some of the challenges we had. My background is in land use planning. I received my master's degree in 2008 from the University of Nevada. I now own a small land use planning consulting firm with 7 individuals working for me. And so really look to use my planning, economics, small business, and regulatory background here at the district. So, obviously the district's core mission is water and sewer and providing the most pristine water possible. But like so many things in life, there's a lot of complexities, there's a lot of things we have to deal with. And so what really inspired me to run in 2018 and run for re-election now is, working towards the most fire secure community possible. One of the things that was really important to me when getting elected to the board is look to couple both the water lines we're replacing with the ones that are most important for firefighting capacity. So look to marry those 2 things together. Other things that were really important to me is working with district staff to develop inspection, maintenance, and expansion opportunities for hydrants. And look to, within our 218 process, which is our rate process, look to develop a system that allows us to finance water lines in the correct method and way to ensure we can continue to fight fire while maintaining our water service needs. Community is also very important to me. Working with other members of the board, the community, and staff, we developed a rates fee structure that was very progressive, that dramatically reduced fees on affordable housing. We say Sugar Pine Village, I won't give exact amounts, but well over $1 million. We froze rates for 2 years during COVID. We use emergency protections to keep our rates as low as possible, even though we needed to finance our water system. Renewable energy is incredibly important to me as well. We've worked for 3 years to move forward with the permitting of a 1 megawatt solar install. We're going to begin next May. A lot of those delays were as the result of regulatory restrictions. I'm inspired to run for re-election because I want to work with our community, SDP staff, to work at the state level to correct those so we can move forward on a much more renewable future. Staff sustainability is important to me as well, and that's why family care, and I'll leave it there.
Shane, what's up next?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Shane Mosses, and I'm an incumbent. I ran originally back in 2014 and lost to Jim Jones, who was a long-time incumbent, but chose to go again in 2020 and was successful, and I've had 2 years of experience now on the board, and it's been quite the experience. It's been really rewarding for myself, and obviously I'm running because I'd like to use this as an opportunity to give back to our community. I think I'll mirror some of the accomplishments that we've completed over the last couple of years, and that Nick has basically spelled out in terms of finding opportunities to reduce rates for affordable housing in terms of capacity fees and that kind of thing. So it's making those upfront costs much more affordable for those folks that are trying to put those types of projects on the ground. Again, I'd like to be glad to be part of the Solar Ad Hoc Committee, which was instrumental in moving our 1 megawatt system. Actually, on October 20th, we'll be bringing it to the board for consideration. So hopefully folks in the audience will be here to help support that initiative. My family has been in Tahoe since 1972, and I've raised 2 kids, a son and a daughter, both of which are college age now, but this is my home, and I guess I want to do whatever I can to continue to support our community, and this is my way of doing it. So my background, I'm an environmental scientist with it's actually not so small anymore, but a environmental research company called Spatial Informatics Group. We do a lot of analysis of maps and remote sensing data and that kind of thing. And we're engaged in a lot of fire risk modeling and assessment and that kind of thing, along with many other things. I guess with that, I'll just hand it off to Dwayne. And again, I want to thank Shelley and Melanie and John for giving us this opportunity to kind of talk with everybody.
Good evening, I'm Dwayne Willis. My top priorities are the ability to fight fires with our water system, replacing our aging infrastructure, and bringing in funds from the outside that keep our rates as low as possible. I believe that the district is in need of a person with my background and experience. My extensive background in community contacts, I believe, are what are needed now. I first learned about the district in 1972 as a student at Columbia College. Then I moved here in 75 and opened a steakhouse that I had 16 years, and second in Carson City in 1980. My good friends John Wynn, Bob Mason, and Jim Jones have been district board members, and they convinced me to run. Since being elected, the South Tahoe Public Utility District has become my family and my friends. I watched them through their careers, I watched them raise their kids, and I care about the employees as much as I care about everything else. I understand where the district has been, and I understand where the district needs to go. It's important for board members to seamlessly fit into the culture of a district, and I believe I'm the person to do that. The district has had to piece together small community water systems and a coordinated functioning system of wells, pipes, tanks, and also meet the Port Cologne Water Quality Act, which is a balancing act of its own proportions. I've had the honor and privilege of standing shoulder to shoulder with the staff and board as we won the Miracle at Kings Beach, won the MTBE battle in court, and have consistently won the battle against storms, leaks, and spills. And I helped get millions from Washington, D.C. and the state, including being involved in the very start of the annual Tahoe Summit and the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act. I've earned certificates in special district finance and governance and a certificate from the School of Executive Leadership. I'm a graduate of the Institute for Organizational Management. I was a founding member of Clean Tahoe, the Lake Tahoe Education Foundation with Brooks Mom, and Leadership Lake Tahoe. The board should hire the best possible GM, give them the clear overall tools that they need, and then get out of their way. The best way to sum it up is the board members should be the what, and the staff is the how. I want to leave the district in better shape than when I arrived. My overall philosophy is the board is, as I said, the board is the what, and the staff is the how. I would be honored to serve the district again and would do my best. Thank you.
You ready for the clock, Melanie? Yep. All right. Go ahead, Nick.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Appreciate you taking the time to come and meet all of us. I'm probably the largest newcomer here, past board member, incumbent, and Nick Haven. My name is Nick Haven. I actually work at TRPA. I've been up here for since 1998, so that's about 24 years now, if I do my math correct. And so I've been in the basin a while, and it was finally time for me to start doing some of the volunteering and giving back to the community that my wife has kind of shown. My wife, Kathy, has definitely contributed greatly to this community in terms of education and a lot of other areas. And I finally have the time to do that as well. And so I found that SDPUD is probably the best fit for my skill sets and what I can offer. And that is really around capital infrastructure, a lot of the funding. I'm actually at TRPA in charge of the transportation program. And so it's my job to also go back to DC and Sacramento and basically lobby for funding. Received probably hundreds of millions of dollars for transportation infrastructure for the basin over the last 20-plus year career that I've had. And I want to do the same for water and sewer infrastructure. I think now's the time. As soon as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed and other legislation, I said we really need to strike while the iron's hot, in terms of getting our infrastructure in order. I know the backlog of infrastructure needs that the district has. We have such an opportunity right now, and we need to capitalize on that. And so I'm hopeful, if elected, that I can bring a lot of skills and contacts to the table, and really roll up my sleeves and get some stuff done. Because this board is a great working board, I'll call it. Right? It's not a board that you just come in and sit back and make decisions and go away. Everyone that's contributed over the years on the board is rolling up their sleeves and doing work. And so I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to bring some new perspectives and also continue the creativity that the district's been able to do and be so successful with. And so I look forward to hopefully getting your vote and hopefully continuing the success of this district and preparing it for the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So now that we've done the intros, I'll open it up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll bring around the mic. And if we have a quiet crowd, don't you worry, I have all sorts of questions up my sleeve. Can you please state your name before you ask the question?
Yes, I'm Linda Meaders. And Nick, I was kind of surprised that you said that the district saved Sugar Pine Village $1 million. Why should the district ratepayers be involved in reducing the cost of low-income housing in the community or workforce housing? Why is that on the ratepayers?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick, and then to just be fair, you guys can all comment on that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of the really interesting things that I got into or really came to fundamentally understand as a board member is that you actually can't do any policy in which you're taking money from one ratepayer and giving it to another. So subsidies, as we would typically know them. So in no way is the existing ratepayers subsidizing affordable housing. What's happening is when someone buys into the system, to the sewer system, you provide a connection fee, and that connection fee used to be a flat fee. So whether you were doing a unit for affordable housing in Sugar Pine Village, or a 5,000 square foot lot in my neighborhood in Tahoe, you pay the same amount. What we did was we said, that's not really equitable or kind of a fair interaction with the sewer system. So what it became is the system was based on your square footage. So if you were 750 square feet or less, you paid a smaller connection fee than that 5,000 square foot house in this example. And so as a result, it's the fee you pay to get into the system is based on how big your project's going to be. And so that's how we look to develop a system to immediately reduce fees on affordable housing without causing any kind of subsidy from ratepayers to affordable housing. Yeah, and so, but more broadly, I guess what I say, and so that way it kind of is a toss off to you guys. Just to be, honest, I think as a function, I've spoke about this at the board many times, I think one of the challenges we face as a community full stop, as a business owner, and as a board member is the lack of housing, especially for new hires. And so I'm supportive just wholeheartedly as a district and more broadly as a community working together in any collaborative way possible to develop housing systems that work and bring people in our community. And so I kind of guess we'll turn it over to loving you.
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of like it really being a rate schedule that's based on your fractional, I guess, contribution or capacity of using the system. So again, I think we're not really taking from one rate payer giving to another. I think it's something that's needed here in our community. People are struggling to pay rent. Rents are out the roof, and so that's one way that I believe that STPUD can help to contribute to our community is by doing things like this that help to facilitate affordable workforce housing. That I think ultimately we're a part of the community and we need to do our part. That's kind of where I come from.
It was me, Linda, I'm guilty, and here's why. When I was on the board before, our connection fees were around 20 to 25% of the income that was coming in. When I came back on the board a while back, it was like 5 to 7%. And it was clear to me as a business decision that we had priced ourselves out of the market. We're a public utility. We get customers. And there were all these customers out there who wanted to buy our product but couldn't afford it. And if they bought our product, we'd get the monthly fees or the quarterly fees at the time. And I've seen so many people struggle trying to get employees and things. So what I proposed, and the board did, was we voted to cut our connection fees by 25% across the board, everybody. Then we did it again and made it 50%. And what these guys did after that is they further refined it to be a little bit more of a formula, which is the same thing, and I think it's good. It's important for us not to burn blinders and price ourselves and our community out of our community by charging prices that they can't afford. So I felt very strongly about it. And I felt like if we were the first domino as an agency to fall, that the other agencies like the city, the county, TRP, and others would follow along. And they did. The city came up with some ways of doing it. They had better opportunities and a wider range of ability to do it than us. So we cut it for everybody. It wasn't just affordable housing, but it had that effect.
I don't know if you want me to answer. I was not on the board. I did not make any decisions on these fees, but I think I applaud the decision of previous boards in terms of supporting workforce housing. As one of the larger employers in the South Shore, I mean, the PUD itself, needs to make sure it can house its workers, it can attract new talent. That is a challenge right now. And so hopefully we can continue to have that policy angle in terms of supporting affordable housing and workforce housing, but obviously not on the backs of existing ratepayers.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
She gave me the stink eye. This is Brooke Lane, and
always wondered why STPUD, with this amazing facility that you have, probably one of the better of the agencies in town, why you do not film and record your meetings. I noticed the participation from the public is very small most of the time, even when important decisions like regarding rates come up. And I just think it would help educate our community as to, you know, the really important things that the utility district does. And I'm wondering why you're one of the last agencies to come along in the 21st century.
Shane, you want to start with that one?
Sure, I agree, Brooke. I wish we had more of our public engaged. I know that Shelley works hard to get out messaging on board meetings and some of the decisions that are coming forward, and, you know, we try everything we can. I'm not sure if it's the time of day when we have the meetings, or just that people just don't have the time to participate, or maybe they're just comfortable in the decisions we're making. I'm not sure, but I would really love to see more public engagement in our meetings. Most of the time, it's staff in here, and, you know, even sometimes they'll stand up and provide us their input, but that's maybe not really representative of our ratepayers. So, yeah, I agree with you. If there's anything more we can do in terms of maybe shifting the time when we have the meetings, or, you know, more outreach, or I'm not sure, maybe we're just not a controversial agency like TRPA or others that have a board setting. Maybe, I don't know if the CTC's board has a large public participation, but yeah, if there's anything else you could suggest that we could do to increase public participation, I'm all for it.
Okay.
I was always for it and was given some technical reasons why we couldn't. Maybe I should have pushed harder, but that's another reason why I think maybe I fit. I answer the chamber phones. I'm also the CEO of the chamber, and I get anywhere from 10 to 30 phone calls a day. And I'd say about a third of them are from local businesses and individuals asking questions. And they ask me questions about things like this. So I felt like I was always the board member who brought a little bit more of that community feel to the board in that sense. In the early 90s, you might remember when redevelopment was starting, and there was some controversy over some of the things that were being charged there. We used to pack the boardroom. It was so full that you couldn't hardly move. Kenny and others were there. It had the right effect. The community turned over that board as they rightfully should. So I agree with you. You know, when I use technology, I usually ask a 9-year-old, but my grandkids help me. But the truth is so many people, especially during the pandemic, needed it and didn't get it. I always ask for it. They always seem to have good technical reasons that buffaloed me, and so we didn't do it.
I would definitely support that. I think accessibility for the public is important when you're making pretty sizable policy decisions. But also the district has a pretty good story to tell. You know, being in the public sphere up here for a long time, you know, STPD has obviously an excellent reputation. It's a pretty tight ship, and I think that needs to be shared also with other organizations. And so I would fully support more accessibility for the public to get involved in policymaking, or at least understand what's going on. And so hopefully that can eventually transpire.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I completely concur. So, you know, taking this from another angle, I think to, you know, everyone's point, it's, you know, how do you get the messaging out of, you know, what the positive things the district is doing, what people can do to support, what our collaborative efforts are going to be with the county, with the city, with other utility districts around the basin, right? And, you know, it's really a function of messaging and getting the voice out there in an ever-crowded world as far as people's attention. And so I'll be honest, I'm a big believer in kind of grassroots advocacy and kind of communal advocacy as well. And so one of the big things I've been looking to do this time is knock on as many doors as I can. I did an 18. The reason I did it is because there's just most people you can't reach. And most of the people I've spoken with, I've never seen out around town. I've never seen in a meeting in any capacity. And so, I wanted to speak to these people and say, this is why I'm running, this is who I am as a person, and fundamentally I believe in renewable energy, and I believe in these things for the district. So that was kind of my mechanism to do that, kind of in an old school way. But beyond that, of course, I'm fully supportive of all kind of transparency that you can create, but looking to be more creative and more collaborative, because just the people on the traditional methods are not going to be successful in getting our voice out there. We have to find something different. And credit to staff and kind of all the ways they try, because it's challenging with the utility district.
Other audience questions?
My name is Doug Durock, and I live out in Myers, and my property abuts district property. Caldor Fire Team within about 20 feet of my back deck. I have repeatedly asked the district to do some clearing of land there to make it a little more fire safe. So right now, it's a bunch of standing dead trees, and I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts on what you would do in the future, and also what is going to happen now with all that standing dead.
I can start. I just want to go back to the other question real quickly. I was saying that, it's not mine, but I like it. People don't do what's expected, they do what's inspected. And the more eyes on a board, the more eyes on staff and things like that, the better we behave, I think. It's not good to do things in a vacuum. As for that, what you're talking about, that's some of the calls I get at the chamber. People go, I don't know who owns the lot next to me, it's all full of this and that. So I get a hold of the city, I get a hold of the Conservancy, and our Chamber of Commerce has actually written extensively on this issue. We dodged a bullet. We are so lucky, thank God, our town didn't burn down, because it could have happened in some of those parts that are a lot like yours. And I hope, if I'm on the board, to make sure that that's one of the priorities.
Sure. Well, I'm not familiar with your property specifically, but I think that's a common case around the basin, right? Especially in the South Shore, now that Caldor Fire's gone through, and maybe before, there might have been standing trees, but I think what I would try to do, if elected, is really strengthen the partnerships with the fire districts, and try to see if there's economies of scale, CTC, others that are doing a lot of the forest thinning and a lot of the forest health projects. I think a lot of that is going on. There's a lot of funding coming in for that. And there are new partnerships emerging already in terms of how to better treat wider areas, right? And get some of that fuel out of there, right? Especially if it's dead wood and other things. So hopefully we can get those partnerships strengthened, and maybe take better opportunity to cover more ground.
No, thank you. First we want to touch on some of the successes the district has had. Thankfully, due to grant funding, the district had gone through a relatively massive fuels clearing effort kind of around these facilities. And so, we're making a lot of projects, but like with so many other things, we're not there. And so fundamentally, it's what I would recommend we do is, if you were to imagine this in kind of a GIS kind of mapping scale, look at all the lots that are most critical for removal, put those on a hierarchy list and begin with the most important and start working your way down, because you only have limited resources, time and money. So you have to start somewhere. You have to develop a metric on how to do that. Otherwise, people are going to be shooting in the dark. I'd love to tell you where I would put these trees. This is one of my favorite topics, because these things just don't disappear. What are we going to do with them? We're going to ship them off the hill. We're going to, expel huge volumes of gas and trucking to go put these where. What I would like to do is work with our community partners, and there's been movement on this front as of late, is to develop, small biomass facilities throughout our community, in which these fuels will be utilized to establish power via those biomass facilities that will power our community in small areas 24/7, and will be available in the event of an emergency, in particular fire, where our power was cut with Liberty Utilities. And so with that, I don't want to take so much time on that.
I hear you, and, we need to do more. John could probably tell you that I'm always passing along, grant funding opportunities for fuel staying. We've done a wildfire risk assessment for basically the district. We've identified where the hazard exists. I know as the Calder fire was bearing down upon us, it took a crew out there cutting down trees like crazy. This is something that we need to get on the radar and deal with, and I hear you, we've got to get it taken care of immediately. And it's not to say that we're not doing anything, because we are. In the last couple of years, we put in 58 new fire hydrants. We have done quite a bit of fuel removal in and around the district's operations here, and so we just need to start clicking off on all those other facilities and other properties throughout the basin. So we're on it, and we're doing whatever we can to bring in additional grant funding to kind of partner up with CTC and Forest Service and others to make this happen. So it's a priority. This is our infrastructure. We need to protect it, and we need to protect our associated neighborhoods that are affected by it. So I hear you.
Other questions?
Thank you. I'm Don Hodgkin. With the city doing the ban on, water bottles, my question is, along with Flint, how many plumbing systems do we have that's contaminated, and what's being done to make sure that we're filling up all our personal water bottles for drinking clean Tahoe water that I'm used to getting for the last 70 years?
I think
I don't remember.
I think
Maya? All right. Yeah, the water that the district provides is amazing, right? It is world class. And so in support of not only the city's ban, but I think more and more people are turning to reusable water bottles. I see them all the time, people have them in the audience. I think we obviously have to look out for contaminated systems, but I'm hopeful that that's somewhat limited in terms of the stellar record that the district already has in providing, high-quality water.
Do you have a figure on how many miles of plumbing needs to be changed?
I definitely do not have a figure.
I thought lead and water went out with the Romans.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that so much water in the United States is bad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, with the lab right next door, the cutting edge technology that this district uses is actually very impressive if you're talking about a rural area like ours. And so I have full faith in the district to identify any issues that come out of the ground in terms of the water. But I don't have any figures in terms of plumbing systems and, potentially contaminated systems. But it would obviously be something that could be addressed.
Yeah, definitely. And so many in our community have probably heard about some of the issues that are happening with the Tahoe Keys water system. And so in regard to kind of PCE and other contaminations that exist within kind of the Key system, that is not impacting us right now. So to speak to your point, what we engage in is a methodical testing system that ensures incredibly high quality drinking water that in comparison to other spaces and places in the United States is stellar and superb. As it relates to the water bottle ban with the city, I think that's an interesting matrix. I think as a water provider, we encourage people to drink Tahoe tap. It's here, it's local, it's our product, we stand by it. We would like to work with our community partners to develop fill stations and other manners in which people can get the water they would need now, every day, and in the event of emergency. These actions are ongoing with partnerships with the TRPA, the League of State Lake Tahoe, other nonprofit groups, SDPUD, and our water service providers. And so look to do this in a collaborative manner. And so that's, again, we have incredibly stellar water, and it's really managed by a robust testing system.
So there is no lead in it? There is no other contaminants in it?
There's arsenic in it.
Arsenic, you said?
Arsenic.
So, again, and John can help correct me if I'm misquoting any kind of statistics on this, but we do have an annual consumer confidence report that are monitoring department puts out every year, and so you can get a sense of kind of the quality of the water. So if you're concerned about a specific constituent, you can go to that. It's on our website. The wells that are contaminated or have been determined to be contaminated are basically taken offline. So our monitoring helps to kind of identify where there's problem areas within a neighborhood or basically within a well system or what have you. And so when those numbers start to click up, then those wells are taken offline and mitigated actions are taking place, either filtration or some kind of way to mitigate the impact. There are wells that are impacted at Tahoe with uranium and PCE, and those wells are being retrofitted with filter systems to help protect those people that are consuming it, or otherwise they're being taken offline. So I guess that water quality is very important to me, and I'm always asking questions about water quality here while I'm sitting here on the board, and making sure that we're responding to customer complaints and we're finding ways to mitigate those impacts to people's drinking water.
You can be assured that the water you drink is safe and clean from the district. One of the reasons is over the years we've been very aggressive. The most notable thing that we did was we were the first utility district or first lawsuit of its kind in the United States against 32 oil companies over MTBE, which was the additive, and we won a $72 million award, the first of its kind in the nation. And so I've testified before Congress several times on that issue. There's two kinds of solutions that we have. Some are natural. I heard somebody say arsenic. What arsenic is if you drill too close to granite has a natural amount of arsenic in it. So there's two ways to handle that. One is to blend it with a huge amount of water so that it becomes negligible, or to shut down the wells. We also had treatment facilities that we had out in Myers that we used that worked pretty well, had carbon filters and things like that. PCE came from the old gas stations, and we think from some of the old laundromats where they would just dump out back or whatever they did. And those plumes, we've been aggressive at trying to get Lahontan to clean them up. And Lahontan studies them, and they find people, but honestly don't do a very good job. One of the reasons the Keys and Lukens are semi-threatened. So the district has 17 good wells. We've closed 4 or 5 of them when I was around, 3 maybe, if I remember. And so, but it's 17 straws in the same filter, and so we've moved to places where there is no pollution, and then in the places where they are, we've done aggressive cleanups. That's what we've done in the past, and I expect to do in the future. The water's clean.
I'd just like to add one thing to that. John Gill, Binder, CPD. The district has very high quality water. We meet all water quality standards. We do robust testing, and there's no lead problem in our district.
Other questions?
Dave Peterson, I'm on the board now. So I have a question for each of you. What should the board's relationship be with staff?
Yeah, I'll start.
Right, no, I think you start, maybe I'll have, right, Mr. Exline. Start.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Dave, for the great question. Thank you again for wearing shoes today. Really find that to be an amazing thing. And, so I'm happy to answer. The relationship with staff, I think, should be very collaborative when we interact within the same space. And what I mean by that is, the hierarchy from a board to, kind of general staff members should be observed. And we should work kind of, John represents us, the staff, so our interactions should be primarily with John. But then as we get into meetings, whether, where decisions are being made, where staff members exist, and we're working collaboratively, I think it should be a very collaborative progressive and kind of positive environment within that space. I think that's, as a board member, one of the things that's been such a privilege is kind of working within those spaces with staff. But that's essentially how I see kind of the relationship from kind of a top-down approach from board to staff.
The board's role really, their authority is really over the general manager, the attorney, and the auditors. And our role really with staff is, we're not here to micromanage staff or to, have any role in kind of their day-to-day, job activities. So that's not really our role as a board member. When staff does come to the board for a presentation, it's our duty as being on the board to ask them questions and making sure that they're covering all their bases. And I guess as far as that goes, other than, I guess beyond that, that's kind of our role really, and our interaction with the staff is really via kind of our interaction with them as they come and bring forward different items for our consideration.
I believe that the board has, as Shane described, two main employees, the general manager and the board attorney. And I believe that all things should, if possible, go through those two people. The reason why is I've been on boards where there was an attorney that was on the board, so they thought they knew better than the other attorney. I've been on boards where there were consultants and they thought they knew better than the consultants. Or, excuse me, because you're a great one, but environmental planners who thought that they knew better than environmental planners. You're looking at but it becomes a problem. And it's hard in a small town because your kids are on the same soccer team as theirs and those kind of things. But there has to be a certain, I call it friendly but not friends, as much as you can do. It's hard. I've fallen in love with the district staff and believe, for the most part, that they're wonderful professional people. And as smart as I may sometimes think I am, I still value their expertise. And when they come to me with a problem, I would go to the general manager. I'd say, have you asked the manager about this? They say, no, do that first. If I wanted to talk to a staff member or ask him a question, I would call the manager and say, do you mind if I call this person? It just has to be that way. You can't have 5 bosses.
I completely agree with all that's been said. I mean, the board is responsible for oversight of the staff attorney and the general manager. But being as I said earlier, kind of a sleeves rolled up board that's doing work and has things to offer, that can sometimes get a little blurred. But you need to stay vigilant in terms of working through the general manager, but still hopefully add value. I think also the board is responsible for passing the budget, right? And so when you talk about staff salaries, healthcare, other benefits, that is extremely important because as working at another organization, staff retention and attraction is extremely important to retain the high-quality staff that the department or the district has. So that's another role that the board can play to support staff. In terms of just retention and making sure we're attracting and retaining the best talent.
I have a short related question. Kind of yes or no. Where in the organization of the utility district are the ratepayers represented? Because it was explained to me a long time ago that the only place where ratepayers are represented is by you guys. So yes or no, do you represent the ratepayers? I realize you have to oversee the staff and the workings of the district, but somewhere in this organization, somebody represents the ratepayers. Who is it?
Yes.
Am I up?
I think you're up.
I would say the board is absolutely yes, you're represented as a ratepayer.
Can't do that. I answered yes, but my wife is here. She knows never give Wallace a microphone. The way I describe it is the gears that turn, one of the gears turns that meshes with the public, and that's the board. But all the staff have people in the public they talk to on a daily basis, and they bring it to the board and encourage people to come. But it's the board.
It is the board. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Following directions. I like to follow directions. No, I think this is an obvious place for the public, and like we talked about earlier, getting more accessible to the public, being more accessible to the public. I know that's what I'm trying to do when I get out and talk to people during my campaign. I want to make sure how I ensure that accessibility on an ongoing basis if I'm elected.
Yes, definitely. It's the sole responsibility of the board, even more so than operating with the general manager or the attorney. Those are sub-items of being a board director. The sole function is to operate on behalf of the ratepayer and the needs and concerns of our community.
I have a quick question.
State your name.
My name is Joyce Youngs. It's the first time I've attended a meeting. I worked at Harris for 40 years and just retired so I can finally come to these meetings. So all I know about the South Tahoe Public Utility District is what I read in the papers over the years. So there's 5 members on the board, correct? And you 3 are the incumbents, and Dwayne, you're running? Did I have that right or wrong?
2 incumbents.
2 incumbents, and then you 2 are running. Okay, now are you on the board also? And what is your name?
I'm Dave Peterson.
Kelly Sheehan.
Kelly Sheen, and you're the
General manager?
general manager. Okay, so when you have your board meetings, I see 6 chairs. So will you be up there also?
Yes, with Melanie,
With Melanie?
clerk of the board.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I want to know exactly. Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Steele. I've been very impressed with the district's leadership combating climate change in recent years. What will you do going forward to continue to address this problem?
Dwayne.
Oh, okay. My environmental credentials, considering that I'm a conservative, are quite good. I was invited by Greenpeace to be the representative from the United States to speak at a conference on how to create an economy in an environmentally sensitive place. We spoke at Lake Baikal. I was there for 10 days. They thought I had something to offer in that regard. And the district here is, according to a water magazine, is one of the 5 in the world that's 100% recycled. So I've been for things that make financial sense. I'm not interested in taking too much away from our main job of protecting against fire, making sure the water is clean, making sure there's no spills. Dr. Goldman said that the utility district, when it was created, was the most significant environmental accomplishment in Lake Tahoe's history. I was also one of the people who started the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act and the forums. That being said, I believe that the public expects for things to make financial sense. So I don't believe that I would go overboard in that direction, but I understand it and intend to include it. But it isn't our primary job. It's part of our job.
I think the district can build on what it's already been doing and do more. In terms of climate adaptation, resilience, there's a lot of opportunity, And I think that, the water conservation, while, our water production is pretty strong up here, honestly. And with with the Caldor fire, with a lot of the forest health projects taking a lot of those straws, those trees out of the water system and the groundwater system, the yield is probably going to be pretty high. So, but I think when you're talking about adaptation and resilience, you're talking about protecting your infrastructure, your facilities, from fire, wildfire, and other climate-related activities. And there's a lot of funding, so it's not about talking about what to do and supporting the district, but it's also taking, again, advantage of a lot of funding that's available right now for climate-related activities that the district has plenty in terms of infrastructure improvement and other projects. So taking advantage of that is definitely something that the district needs to jump on and support its ongoing efforts.
No, I think it's a great question. I've been involved in the climate change movement for a long time, and it didn't come to me as a function of politics or social justice or any kind of deep-seated nature to become an environmental advocate. It was fundamentally, I sat in a classroom at the University of Nevada and saw what fire forecasts were going to do to the Sierra Nevadas and what was going to happen. And I remember sitting there in a class in the early 2000s talking about theoretical. I remember last year being evacuated from my home as that became my reality. And so when we talk about climate change, I want to make sure it's really upfront that fire is what we're dealing with in the manner in which we're dealing with it as a result of climate change. So as we talk about fire, that into itself and everything we do to combat it is working to adapt to the climate change reality that we now face. And no matter what we do is going to be our future. But beyond that, the district can also be a leader as to how to mitigate climate change. As we work through the solar process and we actually work to go much bigger, one of the big things we continue to talk about was the resilience it gave us for fire as a mitigation measure, but also to lower our carbon footprint by providing approximately a third of the power to this plant. And so what the district needs to do is continue to develop an energy system that's completely unreliant on the long transmission line that Liberty Utility provides us because it's simply unsafe and unsecure in the event of a fire. When we do that, we develop a completely carbon-free system. So we marry those two things together. So as we step into the world of climate change, the SDPUD becomes the leader of how you mitigate and adapt to climate change.
Come to our meeting on October 20th. We're going to talk about this solar project, and we hope to get your support for it. That's just one of the examples of the things that we're doing to mitigate climate change. We're doing our part to help reduce our carbon emissions through creation of renewable energy sources like solar. We're exploring and looking into maybe a small-scale pilot biomass facility to help maybe partnering with STR. So those things, some of the pilot work needs to be worked out in terms of what types of impacts to air quality that might create. In terms of climate mitigation, we're looking to basically this last year we're working through kind of an evaluation of all of our stream crossings and our sewer lines and understanding kind of what the potential impacts to our sewer system might be as a result of more atmospheric river type events that come through. There are, and again, I think Nick talked through fire. We're doing a lot to try to improve our water systems to better deliver fire flows to our different neighborhoods and communities. We are actively engaged in partnering with CTC and the Forest Service and getting grants to help to reduce the fuel load that increased fire risk is basically projected to occur here in the basin into the future as a result of climate change. So we're doing things. We're aware of the issue, and there are some limitations right now. The Liberty Utilities has got a tariff that kind of limits our ability to generate renewable energy here on site. So we're working through partners and trying to get that changed in Sacramento. So.
Other questions?
I have one since you, thank you. Since you mentioned the fires, as I understand it, the prescribed burns that we're doing, it's a big bonfire, It's not the low-intensity fires that the indigenous people did. They don't have a history of a forest fire. They've been working with Cal Fire on doing their traditional burns, low intensity, when the fuel is lower. The bonfire sterilizes the earth. The temperature that would germinate a seed is just a little perimeter around it. So each bonfire needs to be spread out further. So it's the low intensity burn, not sterilizing the earth. And then, it's make your piles so it's not going to burn the forest down, but then spread it out and burn one, spread it out and burn one. The prescribed burn needs to change. Cache Creek was surrounded by a Cal Fire, it's 110 acres. It's a conservancy. And the Yolo tribe came and did their proper burns. They've only been here for 10,000 years. And Cal Fire, to their credit, gave them credit for how to do the burns. Are you aware of any of this? And if you are you going to follow any of that instead of doing these bonfire burns that also have gotten away from a few times? Thank you.
Dwayne, I think you're up.
I'm glad. You're probably aware that our forest here used to be sugar pines, and it was a healthy forest with trees 30 to 40 feet apart, the way you see over at Camp Rich and Cuba Beach, those areas. Every tree in the basin was cut down in the 1840s. Every tree. And what grew back was these tamaracks that were choking each other out. So in the mid-90s, we brought state senators, we brought the governor, we brought them into Emerald Bay, and we showed them all the dead, dying trees. So there's going to be a conflagration here, it's a big word for me, if we don't do something. Then in 2004, I flew to Washington with State Senator Leslie and 2 fire chiefs, and we showed Senator Feinstein and Congressman Doolittle and Senator Reed. We showed them what a fire does when it goes through a stream environment zone. We begged TRPA, we begged Mahan to let us thin those out mechanically. They didn't. And Senator Feinstein came out 4 months later and had 300 people in a room and said, get out of the way, thin those forests, or you're going to have a conflagration. Once they burn that way, you're just done. It turns the soil to glass, and water runs right off and creates these mud flows, like the one you saw in Alpine County. Also, I've been writing to others to try to get them to stop these wait and see deals that the Forest Service does, where they see a fire and they say, we're going to watch it for a few days. I guess they want to watch until see which way the wind blows. But when the wind blows, it causes these fires. It happened with the Acorn Fire, it happened with the Caldor Fire, it happened with the one, I forgot the name of it now, Tamarack. Thank you. And so, that's my opinion. Other than that, I have no opinion.
Mr. Haven?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conundrum that always exists in terms of higher treating the forest, right? There's controlled burns, or in what you're referring to, uncontrolled burns. But then there's also mechanical treatment, which, clicking forward from the 90s, we are now approving a lot more mechanical treatments in SEZs, in other, steep slopes and other things. So the pace and scale of treating our forest has ramped up considerably, right? And as we've seen the Caldor Fire, even if you have treated areas, while it may slow it down, it doesn't stop it necessarily. And so it might give you a fighting chance as a community, but the pace of mechanical treatments is important. And then you come back with the understory burns you're referring to, right? To manage and maintain that forest over time.
I think going to the intent of your question, I read once that any question you ask can be found in nature. You know how to ask and you know where to look. And so what I believe your question was kind of the ethic in which these burns take place, and kind of, are we doing it in a wholesale industrial way that's to the detriment of our forest, or are we doing it in a way that benefits our forest? I wouldn't want to speak to the specifics, because fundamentally I haven't done the research to tell you one way or the other what's happening as a result of the way the burns are now. But to the intent of your question, no, I agree. We have to learn the lessons of those that came before us and the methods in which they worked with their ecology and not work against it, as sometimes we do. So I believe that we should look to those that have been successful in the past, even the distant past.
That is Cache Creek Conservancy and Cal Fire and the Yolo Tribe. And I can give you one of the directors' name and phone number if you want that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that SCPUD has very little kind of authority over a lot of our forest land, and that's really the Forest Service and the Conservancy here in the Lake Tahoe Basin. But I hear what you're saying, that one of the issues is that we've had essentially 100 and some years of kind of forest mismanagement. We've allowed the forest to become overly sick. Mismanagement, and that we haven't really kept up and allowed for natural processes to basically burn up those surface fuels and to actually create a more open type forest. And so I think what you're seeing on the ground today is a lot of work just to try to kind of eliminate some of those fuels, and one of the best ways to do that, or one of the most efficient ways to do that, and cheapest ways to do that, is to do pile burning. I think you're referring to that as the bonfire effect. But I think once, we get on top of it and start working around our wildland-urban interface and treating these areas, reducing some of those excessive fuels, then we can perhaps, and probably not very desirable for some of the neighborhoods, to allow a more of a kind of a prescribed burn type, allow it to basically how it used to be. But it's really difficult now that we've got 50,000 people living in the basin or more. So it's really difficult. It's a management challenge for sure. But I think what is going on, and what I see, especially around my neighborhood and throughout like Pioneer Trail and other areas, they're doing quite a bit of work, and you're going to see a lot more into the forest than you used to when you drive down that road. So.
Hello, Ken Gertzwetter. One of the points that you brought up there about the TRPA is allowing us to cut more trees and manage the forest a little bit better. I've got to commend the TRPA on allowing us to go out there. I've been in the tree business since 1981, and I have suffered through all the rules and regulations that all the agencies have done. And one of the worst things that the Forestry Department has done is the lack of manageable forest. They need to get out of the way and let us go in and manage our forest the correct way. The CTC needs to do the same thing. The TRPA, which was a lot of cause of over not allowing us to cut the trees, they've gone the other direction. The Forestry Department currently has 75,000 piles in the Lake Tahoe Basin that have not been burned, and everything boils down to money. If they do not allow the people to get the grants and the funding, rather than pass out pamphlets and tell people what we already know, they need to give the money to the people and allow us to burn, cut, slash, chip, and get everything out of the basin and protect our homes. How do you guys feel about that, about telling the Forestry Department and CTC, get out of our way, stop being reactive and be proactive?
Me? All right. Kenny, I think you bring up a lot of good points, and I'm glad to hear it's changed a little bit for the better over the years. I work at TRPA. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm in the transportation side, but I think it's extremely important. I think you've seen TRPA over the last couple of decades scale up a little bit, get out of people's backyards, delegate to the local jurisdictions. and return to its regional role. The district has the same opportunity in terms of covering the South Shore as a whole and being a leader. I think that was spoken to earlier, and being a leader in issues like this, because there is a relationship to not only protecting assets, but also protecting water supply. So I think there's a natural role for the district to engage in that space. And I'm hopeful that, I think that the recent fires have started to turn a lot, but you're talking about the Forest Service, federal government turning the Titanic, so hopefully it's coming. And I think we have a good leader in the Forest Service. The new forest supervisor is really about partnership and progression. And I really liked your point about action, and that's really what I'm about in my campaign. And I've been talking, I know a lot about grants and other things, but I really feel like we have an opportunity to not continue to talk about what we might do, but actually begin to do those things with additional funding and resources.
No, Kenny, I have to tell you, I agree completely. As I mentioned at the onset, I'm a land use planning consultant, so I run the gauntlet of regulation every day for a multitude of projects around the basin and beyond. A lot of the regulations fundamentally are nonsensical and aren't developed to get us to our desired ends. They're conflicting, they're problematic, they're expensive. They benefit the well-to-do and they do not benefit the poor. South Lake Tahoe is a poor community, and that's what makes it a problem. So I want to develop a system, in kind with our partners at the county and others to ensure that we're doing the forest health clearing we need in an environmentally sensitive way, but also in a way that's going to ensure our security as a home and the overall forest health. The one thing I would add to kind of what you said about those piles is I would take those piles, I would bring those to regional biomass facilities, and we would power our critical infrastructure with those piles instead of letting the smoke just go in thin air. Why that's important is because, as I said earlier, and it bears repeating, when fire comes, they're going to cut our power. We're then solely relying on diesel to allow ourselves to pump water. Pumping water is incredibly power intensive. So if we have these redundant biomass facilities, we use these piles of what we need to do wisely, we can take care of our forests and we can power our community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, we are making progress, but there's challenges, right? So it's, not only, a lot of the planning's already been done. And, I think a lot of the forested land has gone through the whole environmental review process. One of our biggest challenges in terms of treating the forest is getting the boots on the ground, getting people to do the work. And that's the hard part. And that's where affordable housing and some of these other things kind of come into play. And so it's, again, I don't really need to repeat everything that's already been said, but I think we are making positive progress in terms of our, getting stuff done in our forests, and hopefully you're experiencing that through your company as well. So.
As I said, I've been working on this issue for a long time. What's gone bump in the night for me was catastrophic fire for many years. And I begged, threatened, testified before Congress, as I said, brought senators back, and we just couldn't move them until we started having the fires. And we're so far behind, we're trying to catch up. We did try a biomass at the high school, and because it was so expensive to go in and just grab a tree with a helicopter, because they wouldn't let anybody put roads in to get the trees, that it was too expensive for it to even make. It just didn't pencil. It didn't make sense. So the biomass hasn't worked, unfortunately. And the trees, because they've sat there so long, are, Kitty might disagree, but a lot of them are trashed. They're not able to be used for lumber the way you would normally use them. So we've got that issue. The only, and when it comes to grants always have strings attached, and you have to monitor them, and it takes years to fulfill your grants. What I found was most useful was kind of like the old markups. For instance, the original Lake Tahoe Restoration Act, we had them put in there and said, give South Tahoe Public Utility District $1 million. And then we used that. Then when President Clinton came, we had him give us $7 million. And the strings weren't attached. I believe in getting appropriations and then actual allocations through Congress. And I think there's an opportunity because we're sort of our community has both sides of the field. In fact, I helped hire 2 different consultants, one Republican, one Democrat, and they helped us open the doors to getting money in Washington. Dennis Cockney would tell you about that. Who wants to endorse me?
Time for one? Sure.
John Teal again. I was wondering if you could share a vision or goal that you have for the district, and how you might help us get there.
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the clear mission of the district is to continue to provide pristine water to our consumers and also export affluent waste in an efficient manner outside the Tahoe Basin. But beyond that, what I would like to work with the district to do is to develop a 24/7 renewably powered system here at the district so we can continue to fight fire. I want to develop a rate fee structure and processes that allow us to ensure we're replacing the water line we needed annually to ensure our community is protected from fire. I want to work towards grants to make sure we're getting every dollar from the state and federal government we can. Fundamentally, it comes to protecting our community and doing it in the most environmentally and economically feasible way possible. I think there's a lot we can do to that end. And so I want to also work kind of with our grassroots advocacy that I've worked here locally and look to bring that almost to a regional sense. And what I mean by that grassroots advocacy, everyone thinks is house to house and person to person. But really, it's a bunch of small collaborating against big. So one of the things that, in credit to John's leadership on this, is we've been in a grassroots effort with other water utility companies, both in the basin and out. Other partners, we've been working collaboratively with so many people to look to advance these goals, and that is why I'm running for re-election to the board.
For me, again, I share your vision in terms of continuing to be basically the highest quality water that we can provide. I think that we get to that by really investing in our infrastructure and providing the upgrades that we need to our system. I have a vision for continuing to foster and to maintain a professional staff, one that's compensated sufficiently, and that we are able to attract new and talented folks. I really would like for us to be more forward-thinking and more active in pursuing additional grant fundings. I think Nick hit this on the head when we first kicked off in terms of going after the IIJA funds and some bipartisan infrastructure money. I think we can do a lot on that front without affecting ratepayers' pocketbooks. And ultimately, I think another vision is to move us towards 100% renewable in terms of fueling our operations.
Well, I have quite a few that I've thought of since I've been off the board. One was I believe that we have a responsibility to the smaller private water companies to make sure they don't fail. They're not our customers now, but they could potentially be, and they need to drink fresh water the way the rest of us do. An issue that goes bump in the night for me, especially when I walk my dogs down in Cuba Beach and places, is to see our sewer manholes right on the beach. I believe that we ought to make a full effort to get the Corps of Engineers to help us move our pipes out of that extreme environmental zone. I understand we're gravity fed, but we could do that, and we could probably help the city fix the roads at the same time, city and county, by putting them in the roads or next to the roads where we can maintain them and keep them from spilling into the lake. I believe, and I've worked on for years, and we have one example of it, the downhill flow of our water. We pump, it costs us $1.5 million a year roughly. I'm guessing Paul would either nod but it's roughly that, to pump that sewage up over the hill. On the way down, it's energy lost. And when we replace that sea line, I think we ought to make it into one long reservoir that generates electricity with built-in wells on the way down. We already did that in West Block. It worked really well. The other is stormwater. Even though we're not a stormwater agency, every stormwater drain that's next to the road in this town goes straight into the lake. That's an environmental tragedy. And I think that we should work with the city to help them become more responsible or able to help that all the way around the lake.
Well, it's going to be a little bit of a broken record, and I think Mr. Exline and Shane have covered it, but, you know, I'm about infrastructure. I'm totally supportive of, you know, sustainability and renewable energy for the district, but we have a freight train running away from us in terms of infrastructure and infrastructure repair. It's kind of like in my business with roads. If you don't keep up on your roads, it exponentially runs away from you. And so how to catch up, how to do that without compromising and relying solely on ratepayers is extremely challenging. And so that's why I think the grant funding and other things can leverage those ratepayer dollars and not have a significant impact, hopefully, on ratepayers, because I think that we've already gone through a metering project that substantially changed the way the fees are paid. I think people are still kind of spinning and not understanding what's going on there. And I think we're putting a lot on our public. And so the more we can mitigate, you know, increases and relying to fund our capital improvement program on ratepayer increases over time, I hope that we can bring in more dollars and be more successful, because there are literally trillions of dollars out there. And if it's not coming here, it's going somewhere else. Thank you.
Arguably, we have the cleanest water in the world, and that is also when you send our sewage water out of the basin over to Alpine County. That water is extremely clean also. I think it's time to start thinking outside the box on what we do with our exported water. We need to not attack, but we need to readdress the Port of Cologne Act that states that all recycled water will not be used inside the basin. That being said, I don't understand, because later on down the road, Southern California is going to start eyeballing the lake for water, because they're running out of water and we have plenty. So I would look at sending the export pipe straight up over the hill to the top of Echo Summit, run it down into the headwaters of the American River. By the time it reaches Folsom, it's going to be clean. When it does reach Folsom, they will actually clean the water also before they send it out to the public. We could actually sell, 7 million gallons a day or something like that goes out of the lake. We can actually sell that water to them. But because of the Port of Cologne Act, we cannot send the water up over there. So it's time to think outside the box. And on another, side note, we could actually put a pond up at Sierra Tahoe, and they could actually do snowmaking, so we could ski all the time. But we need to think outside the box, and we need to start looking at other avenues of what we do with our recycled water. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I guess for me, it's just, it's a non-starter to suggest that we start pumping it back into Lake Tahoe. I don't agree with that. I think, there are opportunities. That's my opinion, though. There are opportunities where we're currently shipping the water in terms of what we can do with it. Right now, we're basically giving it away to 5 or 6 different ranch families, and we're utilizing it to basically water some pivot rigs for alfalfa. So we are utilizing it to some extent, but we are coming up to the end of our contract with the ranchers in terms of how we could potentially generate revenue. So there's an opportunity to kind of renegotiate that and maybe generate some revenue. There's other opportunities. We've got like 2,000 acres down there that we can maybe create some wetlands or some other co-benefits from that recycled water. Create a place for people to visit, to birdwatch, basically, there's lots of uses, and maybe there's, like you suggested, maybe there is an opportunity. It sounds pretty expensive to pump it over and have it basically be utilized on the western slope. It's not to say that we can't do that. We are going through right now a kind of a review of kind of what we are doing with our recycled water. And so hopefully with that, there'll be some pretty good suggestions on how we can best utilize that and generate revenue from it.
All the water in Lake Tahoe actually still drains into Nevada naturally. But what's not natural, Jenny, is what you talked about. I think the number, and I could be wrong, is 3 billion gallons a year we send over into Alpine County. A lot of people may not know it, but when I studied the district in 1972 in class, you could drink the water at the end of the process. The problem with that process is it took such chemicals that it was very expensive and it was caustic, and they didn't want to use those anymore, so they converted it. That kind of makes sense. But there are districts that make swamps and marshlands, which we once had here in proliferation around the lake, that can, clean the water. There's ways to do it. The technology is improving. But it can be cleaned to where you can drink it. Sometimes they use aquifers far away where they pump it into the ground and they bring it up later. It's not impossible. It's just expensive. And so at this point, the farmers down there and the ranchers, we raise alfalfa down there, and the ranchers use it for their cattle, and then it goes on into Nevada, where it was going to go anyway if it went through the lake. It's just kind of a shame to pump that much water out. It doesn't seem like it's good for the environment. To do that, that's a lot of water. So that's my opinion. Also, there was an idea to put a tunnel under Echo Summit, or through Echo Summit, so the traffic wouldn't have snow and we could take our water out. And that was killed by the agencies, but I thought it was a good idea. It would cut the time to travel, and it would put the water into California.
I appreciate your ideas, Kenny. I mean, I think that's the creativity that this district has operated with for a long time. And the recycled water that's going out of the basin now is a commodity. I mean, there's value to that. And I appreciate the district's efforts now with the alfalfa operation as well as the ranching operations. So I think there's obviously room for new ideas. Groundwater recharge, I don't think is an issue here. I don't think our yield requires that. However, there are other areas, whether it's in California or Nevada, that there is a need. Water is going to become one of the top commodities, I think, in the future. And so there is a value there, and we should be exploring a lot of those ideas in more depth.
No, I completely agree. As Mark Twain said, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. And so water is an incredible commodity. The whole development of civilization is predicated on the existence of water. Without water, we are nothing. Water is what makes Earth special in the universe. And so to your point, it is an incredible commodity. It is the commodity in the universe. And so I'm in favor of all creative ideas and ideas that work logistically to reuse that water in whatever way possible. One thing I want to recommend in the short term, kind of with the existing system, things to consider, is I'm currently working with the Incline Village General Improvement District on their exportation, or their effluent exportation line going over State Route 28. And one of the things we're working on is the development of hydrants along the sewer exportation line. And those hydrants could only be utilized in the event of an emergency. And those hydrants could be used for fire. And so we've cleared the kind of first hurdles. We had an environmental assessment approval. We have interacted with TRPA, and although we will have to permit it, the use of the affluent waste for firefighting will not be prohibited by TRPA. And so I think that's something we could do in the immediate, we could agree on. We could use what HIPGA's doing in their regulatory processes that are going to be approved. The next thing you know, we're fighting fire all the way over Alpine County, which we desperately need to do.
Other questions?
I'll ask one. What do you view are the district's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Who am I on? I think Wallace. Mr. Wallace, you're up.
Okay. I believe the strength is the professional staff. Stupid was the wrong name for this outfit. I've always felt like it was such an oxymoron because one of the reasons I've enjoyed being on the board is being around such smart people. I just stand in the look smart, I just stand next to them. It's good for me. Opportunities, I think the opportunities are to come up with innovative things without breaking the bank. And I say that because of the weakness. The weakness is, as Nick has pointed out, is our aging infrastructure. There's a lot of things we'd like to do, but with the Titanic sinking, you don't rearrange the deck chairs. You get in the lifeboats and swim. And we are just like we are with the forest. We're behind the 8 ball. The district has been able to pretty much keep up, but the system is aging quickly. And little earthquakes shake loose valves, and rust happens, and pipes come to the end of their useful age. So I'm more concerned about that. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and what was I forgot? SWOT.
Threats.
Threats. Threats, I think, is being stopped in what we do by the environmental agencies that seem to be overlords. They stopped so many of our good projects before they got started. We got the NEPA, the CEQA, the Santa Maria, all those things. We need to be able to have a better relationship and a smoother sailing with those because we trust each other and we have common goals. And those common goals get together by meeting with each other face to face and understanding each other.
Well, I would say that the strength, I agree with Dwayne, it's the legacy of this district, it's the staff, it's the leadership, and, the facilities and the quality of operation that exists. That is no small feat, that should not be ignored. And I think some weaknesses might be more transparency. We talked about it earlier. Not that the district isn't transparent, it's just about getting the word out, right? I think we talked about it at length earlier in terms of public engagement and the public understanding the asset that they have here, right? And the service that the district provides. That could potentially be improved. And maybe vote for more support of whether it's rate changes or other initiatives that the district's trying to do and garner more support from the public. I think that could be a great opportunity as well. So if there's an opportunity for the district, it would be to mobilize on grant funding again. I'm going to be the broken record. But there are opportunities that abound right now, and we need to capitalize on that. In terms of threat, I think climate is definitely a threat in terms of facilities, protecting the facilities, and then also the change in terms of more rain, less snow, different elevation change, and what that then does to the water yield, how long it holds water. That's a variable situation that the district needs to keep up on.
So, to the broken record, of course it's staff, and with the desire not to repeat what others said, I would just tell you one of my favorite staff stories to kind of reiterate this point. When we were as a community, we're all evacuating for fire, grabbing our things, grabbing our loved ones, grabbing our pets. District staff was out cammering the lines on Highway 50 because the traffic wasn't there. And why I tell that story, and I think about that story a lot in my own life, is because what you can do with that kind of quality of character is you can do anything. And so that's why I'm an optimistic person. That's why I wanted to work here in the district. The opportunity we have, going even broader than that, is our community. I've knocked on a lot of doors and I've talked to a lot of people, and there's exceptionalism within this community. And if you're open and honest with what we need to do and why we need to do it, people will accept it and ask how they can help. And more broadly, they'll shake your hand and thank you for telling them why you think the way you do. The weakness we have is simple. We've underfinanced our water replacement system as we developed our kind of combined STPUD system for decades. We didn't fund our system for decades appropriately. We kept rates artificially low, and as a result, we're now sitting at the precipice of a hugely underfunded liability in terms of replacement of water and sewer line. Meets the greatest inflationary economy in many of our lives, certainly my life. That's a huge issue. The threats we face are Nick said it, climate change, fire. But what's inspiring me and why I love working in this group and working as a board member, and been honored to be here, is that when you're working in a collaborative mindset with great people, you're able to kind of put water on those deeper concerns and get to problem solving. That's what we've done as a community, and that's why I'm running for re-election as a board member.
So for strengths, I think we're blessed with a great source of water. So we're clearly blessed with that. We don't have to deal with all the pre-treatment and everything else that a lot of other water districts have to deal with before they serve it to the public. I would echo that our staff here at STPUD is highly dedicated, professional, a pleasure to work with every time I have the opportunity to interface with them. Some of the weaknesses, I guess it kind of goes along with our strengths, but we do have an aging staff, and we need, one of our weaknesses is the challenges of attracting new staff, given some of the affordable housing and cost of living issues that exist here in the South Lake Tahoe area. Opportunities, echo again, I think there's tons of opportunity as it relates to the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law and the pipeline funds coming from California for helping to bolster our basically funding for infrastructure projects here. And I think that would be, obviously an opportunity to not straddle our ratepayers with that. So what's our threats? I guess our threats is, hit this before, is our aging infrastructure. Obviously, we need to catch up with repairing that and getting this stuff in our water lines replaced. I think climate, of course, wildfire risk. I think there's also risk associated with flooding that could basically really inundate, similar to what had happened in 2017 and the Upper Truckee, basically watershed where we're getting some of our sewer system inundated with basically water that we had to treat and send over the hill. And then also some other, I guess, threats are, inflation, supply chain and cost of living, that kind of stuff. That's stuff that's kind of threatening our ability to basically improvements to the district.
We have time for one more question, if anyone has questions. All right, then maybe I'll wrap it up with closing statements. So I think we started with you. We'll go to the other Nick to start with closing statements, closing statements and make our way back through.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks again for sticking this out. I appreciate it. This was a pretty long haul here. So hopefully you found some good information and learned a little bit more about, especially me, being kind of the newcomer here. I just want to leave it with, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. I want to give back to this community. I think I have the skills to offer in a lot of the things I talked about. And I'm talking about action and practical experience, and I want to put that to use for the district. So I'll do whatever it takes to provide that and hopefully accelerate that infrastructure replacement, again, not on the backs of the ratepayers completely. That's a big tenet of mine. So I will work hard, and I just appreciate the opportunity to sit amongst these folks and look forward to your vote, hopefully, and getting elected and putting those skills to work. Thanks.
In order to understand what someone is going to do, it's good to look at what they've already done. And in that sense, I believe that I check 9 boxes. I could have had 10, but I thought that was too biblical. I'm a long-term resident, I've lived here 50 years. I know and understand the district staff and hierarchy and corporate culture, which is important. I've known the last 4 general managers and was part of hiring several of them, including John. I know the district finance as well. I was on the district finance committee, I don't know, maybe 20 years over the last 30. I understand the challenges of the district of the aging infrastructure because it has always been that challenge and we've always worked on it. I was part of getting and implementing the asset management plan so that we do and put everything on a schedule so that we weren't fixing the wrong thing at the wrong time. I've worked at the federal level and helped the district get millions of dollars, and once again, in allocations versus grants, which are very different. We've augmented the needed projects that we needed to fix. I know the district's partners and the environmental watchdogs very well. I was on the El Dorado County Water Agency Board. I've worked with the EPA, the USFS, the League to Save the Tahoe, the city, TRPA, and was a steadfast part of the MTBE lawsuit that brought us a lot of money that helped us fix infrastructure. I understand the fragile environment that we live in. I helped start the first and many subsequent presidential summits that brought the $1 billion that's come over the last 25 years. I was appointed by Secretary Dan Rickman to a committee that reported to the White House on environmental matters. I was invited and attended the forum in Moscow where Kusk and Lake Baikal. But I also understand the business environment. I understand on a daily basis those people who are sitting down at their kitchen table and have to write a check and they don't have the money and they're worried about getting their services cut off. That is real right now. Some of the people have to choose between buying eggs and paying us or paying the utility district. I've been a chamber CEO for many years. I've run 6 lodging properties. I've managed restaurants. I have a consulting company. And I've also proved that I'm able to work with boards. I understand what a board member is supposed to do, what a board member is not supposed to do, and so I can hit the ground running. And I'm electable. The voters have elected me before, and the board actually appointed me a while back to fill in a spot. So in order to see what somebody's going to do, look at what they've done, and I've done a lot, and I appreciate your vote.
I'll make this quick. I know people want to get out of here, but I really appreciate you all coming out, and it was really refreshing to get questions from the audience. I think the last time we had one of these, I think Shelley was the moderator and asked all of the questions, so thank you for some really good questions, and I appreciate that. And again, I just want to basically reflect on my 2 years experience. I think we've made a lot of accomplishments that are positive for our community, are positive for the district. I'd like for you, as you go to the polling booths, to consider my background in natural resources management and science as being kind of a unique voice on this board. I think I bring to it some perspective that may not be fully represented. And again, I think for me, most importantly, as I sit here on the board, it's really clear to me to really reflect on our ratepayers' interests and what they want out of this district. And so I'm hoping to continue that, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure to be on the panel tonight with everybody, and thank you to everyone in attendance. It was great to have so many fresh eyes and so many members of staff in attendance as well, and also individuals running for other elected office, because that collaborative element is so important. You know, tonight I've had the opportunity to kind of speak about sustainability from kind of an environmental ethic. But I got to be honest with you, as a board member, the thing I would want you as a community to take away from tonight is that all credit goes to staff. I work in a land use planning consulting firm, as I've mentioned, and I work with many, many regulatory agencies. And SDPUD is by far the most well-run, well-organized, and well-oiled machine of any regulatory entity I work with. That hydrant system was developed by someone sitting in this room. project development in the South Shore is guided by someone sitting in this room. Our community is educated about water issues by somebody in this room. And so when I look at sustainability, one of my functions as a board member, and this is really directed at staff, is to understand that sustainability is simply the ability for things to function today and into the future. So when we talk about housing, it's not an environmental ethic, it's because I was young and poor, right? When it comes to childhood, people with young children needing care and help, it's because I was young and poor again with kids now. When it comes to all the other challenges that are going to face the district, and in particular their staff, we need to work collectively as a board and as an agency to ensure that we're addressing those items to continue forward with the amazing culture that exists here. That culture is why I'm proud to be a district board member. That culture is why I'm proud to represent the district and the community. And that culture is why I'm proud to run for re-election again, and why I'm working so hard at it. And so, what I hope to accomplish in the next 4 years, if I'm fortunate enough to receive your vote, is many different things on behalf of the district and the community. But in reference to the staff, I want to continue to work within the staff to ensure we're developing a sustainable reality so that this culture can persist and expand into the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, everyone, for coming. You know how to get a hold of them. They'll be here afterwards to ask if you have any further questions, and have a lovely evening.